listening to Season 6 of the Devoted Dreamers podcast, where we talk about our God-shaped dreams. I'm your host, Merritt Onsa, and in this new season, I want more than ever to point you to God's truth to help you move from uncertainty to action in your God-shaped dream. We will begin each episode with stories of women just like you who have learned to listen to that still small voice of God, who have found the courage to take their next step and have trusted Him along the way. But you need to know that this show isn't about hustle or doing more, working harder, or being better. Nobody needs more of that. This show is about experiencing God's grace and learning His love for us in the midst of the labors, dreams, and ambitions He's given us, and all the challenges that come hand in hand with those. So whether you're starting out, or maybe even feeling like the years of dreaming are beginning to run out, whatever your dream and the doubts you're battling along the way, you need to know God sees you. And there's a beautiful passage in Ephesians 1 that I keep coming back to, where our gracious Father reminds you that you were created and chosen for a purpose, in order that you might live for the praise of His glory. So whatever might be standing in the way of your dream, whether that's something deep inside of you or something external, God has a plan for you, His daughter, and He is with you in it. And I pray that you will know those truths a little deeper today as a result of this conversation. You can always connect with me and the other listeners in my Facebook group or via my Instagram at MerrittJO, or as a patron of the show. Everything you need to know, including the show notes, can be found on my website at merrittonsa.com. And now, here's today's episode. Hello, Devoted Dreamers, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited to be with you here today and to share today's guest with you, Haley Williams. She's the host of Kindled Podcast, and we're actually kind of trading interviews. I just talked to her on her podcast, and now we're doing this one for Devoted Dreamers. So Haley, if you don't know her, or if you haven't heard her podcast, she's a wife and a mom of 2 girls, almost 3. You said you have a baby due, right? When's your baby coming?
Early November.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So a couple months. But Haley is a serial entrepreneur and, like I said, hosts Kindled Podcast. It's all about work and motherhood and the grace we need for both. She also has her own business doing web and graphic design and loves working from home and using her passions and skills while raising her daughters. And speaking of motherhood and grace, Haley just gave me a 10-minute breather to go put my baby down for a nap. So we are just all over it today. But Haley, thanks for being here and being willing to chat with us today.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And we're just going to jump right into it. Will you talk about your God-shaped dream and what you feel like God has for you right now in your life?
Yeah. Wow. How far back can I start?
It's totally up to you. How far back do you want to go?
I'll give a real quick synopsis, I guess, of what got me here, maybe.
Sure.
So where I'm at now is what you mentioned. I am hosting a podcast called Kindled, and my vision for that was to engage with other women like myself in conversations that were meaningful and impactful for our lives and our everyday, which my everyday includes work, momming, and needing a lot of grace. So that's pretty much, the recipe for my life. And I realize, there's a lot of women like me that are just trying to figure it out. We don't have everything on lockdown. We don't always have secure childcare. We don't have, the life structure that maybe affords us like the regularity that some people have. And so in that place, there's just a need for maybe an additional helping of grace for yourself, for your kids, for your work, your life. I mean, all of it. And there's challenges too that are really real. And I wanted to, I'm a verbal processor. I understand how I feel by talking about what I'm feeling. And then once I talk about it, I'm like, yeah, I'm getting clarity on this. And so I wanted to have those conversations with women about work, and what are the challenges you're facing, and what's working for you, and where are you seeing victory, and all those things. And so that's kind of the dream, I guess, is engaging with women in those conversations. And I've been doing that for about 18 months. So it's been really just a huge blessing in my life. I never thought, I'm sure everybody says this, like, I never thought I'd do a podcast, and then all of a sudden you are. But really I didn't. And it was actually all the way back. So like you said, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I had a business for 7 years that I was building, that it was a bridal accessories business that I started in 2011 after I got married to my husband. And I grew that business for 7 years. And in the summer of 2018, last summer, I sold it. And that was a move that, it took me a lot of prayer and spiritual work to get to the place of being like okay with selling that business, because it was a big part of my identity, to be honest. And I was really wrapped up in it and didn't see how I could really be myself without it. And God had other plans for me. So, as I started that, it all kind of started actually in January of 2018. And that's when, God kind of gave me the truth that I think I was missing, which was that I am not my work. And so that was like the line from him, really from the Holy Spirit, that I heard. And that line started a shift in me, started transformation in me that made me kind of go like, this changes everything. If I'm not my work, this changes everything about what I'm doing, what I have to do, what I can do, what I can dream of doing. And so that's when the dream started for the podcast. And I think I mentioned to my husband, maybe it would be fun for me, like, maybe what I really love is not making bridal accessories, but, engaging with women and talking with other women like myself or not like myself, and just, and just having conversations. I really just love talking. And he heard that, and he ordered me a microphone off Amazon that night. It arrived 2 days later. He showed it to me and I was like, what? I don't know if I want to do this. He's like, you're doing it. And I just was like, I'm not sure if I'm ready. I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. I don't even know. I don't have a game plan. I don't have an editorial calendar. I don't even know what I'm going to say. And he was like, you'll figure it out. You always do. And so that is how I got started.
What a great husband.
Yeah, he is a great husband. Yeah, he saw what I needed, I think. And that was just, God really used him to help me start before I was ready, which is something that I do a lot of the time really well on my own. But in this case, I don't know that I would have. So, yeah, that was a huge blessing.
Well, and so you said 18 months ago is that when you started the podcast?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it sounds like that's been affirmed in you. Like, you're still doing it now, a year and a half later.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really has. I mean, like I said, I didn't have the vision for a podcast necessarily, much before the time I kind of off the hand or off the cuff it mentioned it to my husband. But I think, obviously God knows us better than we know ourselves. And what I think is really cool, I might be jumping ahead, but like the dream that he has placed on my heart was not really mostly, I mean, I know it has been used in the lives of other women for sure, but I don't know that it was mostly about them or mostly about what people needed from my podcast. But I have seen for sure, in a way I never would have expected, how he has used it in my own life. So it's pretty amazing. I'm sure you hear that from your guests, a lot of times how our dreams are often used by God to shape and transform us and our own hearts and lives and beings. It's been cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always kind of say, like, it's not really about what that dream is. Like, we could go do anything and he's going to use that to shape us. And yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think a lot of that happens through our challenges and our struggles. And like you said, the starting before you're ready, you don't even really know how to do a podcast, but you're doing one, and you do now.
Right. Yeah. You figured out.
Yeah. So talk about then what some of those challenges have been for you that you've had to kind of overcome and that God has grown you through.
Yeah. Wow. Well, life throws a lot of challenges at you. I mean, I think just the changing of seasons is enough to kind of throw you for a loop. Going from being single to getting married, there's challenges for the first few years of marriage as you're adjusting to life with each other. And then, I think we had our first daughter right about the time we had been married for 4 years. And that was another huge transition from 0 to 1 kids. And then our second daughter came 19 months later, another big transition. That was 1 to 2 was way harder for me than 0 to 1. And so that really, and that was also the fall before my, wait, was that right? No, how old is she? She's almost 3. So I guess she was about 18 months at that time. So that was, that was actually a whole year before all of the podcast stuff happened. And that was a very, just I don't know, that second born, there's something else. They're totally, my first one was a lot like me. And so my second daughter not being like me was harder for me to figure out, and still is, like, just a different animal. And she's so amazing and great. She's a great girl, but just a challenge. And, when she was like 4 or 5 months, she went through that sleep regression that, a lot of babies do. And it was for sure the hardest period of my life. That 4 to 5 months was like, I couldn't get her to sleep. I couldn't, I didn't know what was wrong. She was crying. Bedtime took me 2 hours every night. I was just like helpless. And I remember one night in particular, I was just out of ideas. I was like, I don't know what to do for you. I can't get you to sleep. Nursing doesn't help. Walking you in circles, swaddling, she was fighting it. Later, I came to find out swaddling was the reason she was fighting me so hard, because she was ready to be done with the swaddle, but I was still trying to force her in there and keep her wrapped down because I was so afraid she would just not go to sleep. And I remember, so I told my husband, take her on a car ride. Maybe that'll be it. So he did that. He was gone for about 45 minutes, and I called him to check in and see how things were going. And I heard her crying in the background, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's still crying. What, how is this child still awake? It was 10 o'clock at night. And when he got home, I was just laying in bed, what's the word? Not desolate, desperate, hopeless. And it was the first time he's ever been like, are you okay? I think I was like, I don't care anymore. I don't care. I give up. And he was like, I was genuinely concerned for you. And I was like, no, I'm not. I wasn't suicidal or something. I just was like, I was done. I was done fighting. I was like, fine, you win. I don't know what to do for you. But that was one of those times. Every mom has been through some sort of thing like that where you're like, I can't do this another minute. And, so, I'm not immune. I'm not immune to that. And, man, I don't even remember how she got to sleep that night, but eventually she did, right? Nothing lasts forever. And, as we grow as moms, we believe that more and more, but man, got caught up in that tangent, but that's just real. So there's some PTSD there. I'm like, oh God, please help this baby not be as challenging. But beyond kids and just, the normal life transitions, I think, the podcast, hosting the podcast and talking with women and having so many conversations that are, around spiritual development or growth, even in, professional life or in my work has, like I said, I am an external processor. So it has really caused a lot of growth in me and also showed me a lot of the areas that I'm still struggling. And God has used it to really uncover areas of my own brokenness that he wants to address. So like I was saying, it hasn't really been mostly about other people as much as I feel like what God has done in my own life and in my own heart. So, one of those areas is, I think, just understanding how much I don't have it together, how needy I am for grace. And, because in the same day that I might be having a conversation with a woman on, having patience with our children and talking about various parenting strategies, or maybe it's an older mom who's, talking about how it's so important that we raise our children with this long vision of where they're headed and not just thinking that it's kind of about the day to day, even though when they're little, that's easy to do. in the same day that I have that conversation, I could yell at my kids that morning or be really frustrated. And so it's like, it just constantly is bringing me back to like, I actually need the real grace of God. I don't just need to have a conversation talking about grace. I need real grace in my life. I need real forgiveness. I need real transformation in my own heart, not just to have a conversation about it. And so, yeah, I guess it's just really pointed me to my only hope, over and over again.
Yeah. In motherhood, in our day-to-day life, all those things. I love it. I mean, I love how you just gave me grace when we had an appointment at a certain time and you're like, go take care of your baby.
Yeah.
So,
well, if it was me, I totally, I just would not be able to, focus the same way.
Yeah. So what's the most valuable lesson you've learned through that?
I would say, just the, in relation to what I was just talking about, the kind of unrelenting and unconditional forgiveness of God and unrelenting love that pursues us, because there is really no amount of conversations or episodes I could record or, meaningful, interactions that I could have with someone that will cause transformation in my heart, that will cause real change, that can change me. Like those conversations could be catalysts to point me to Jesus, but they can't change me. And so I think I'm just seeing, it's a constant reminder of like where I have to go for hope, where I have to go for peace and for forgiveness and for, the love that we all are so desperately looking for. It's not found in, the approval of your listeners or how many downloads you get or your audience loving you and feeling in such alignment with everything you say, because certainly that doesn't happen all the time either. And there are some things that come across and don't and aren't received as well, And so I think he's just using it to point me back to the source, my true hope, and that when I do fall short, I can be assured that he doesn't turn his back and kind of walk away disappointed the way that, that I would, that with myself. Sometimes I think I'm harder on myself than he is in ways that I'm like, well, you really failed. Now you've got to go, you got to make your way back into righteousness. You better work harder next time. You better not do that, And he's not that kind of father. He is always ready with arms wide open, and he doesn't require that of us, to be forgiven and to be set free. Like his yoke is easy and his burden is light. So, I'd say that's the most valuable lesson is learning that there's no amount of like work I can do myself that makes me right before God. And, and maybe sometimes that's why he allows my work to fall flat. So I have to be reminded it's not about that. That isn't where you should be looking. That was never where you should have been looking. And, so I don't know, I'm rambling, but that's a lot of it.
I think that's really important because we can get caught up in whatever it is, whether that's, I'm going to be a good wife to my husband, or I'm going to be a great mom to my kids, or I'm going to pursue this dream and it's going to, change the world, whatever. It's like, no, that was never his intention for us in these other loves. So appreciate that. Like it's always a calling back to him and our hope in him. So it's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I can even share more specifically about, what does that look like? Those disappointments or failures.
Yes, please.
So yeah, as I was kind of mentioning, sometimes I think he allows work to fall flat. That happened to me last year. I decided, so as I mentioned earlier, I am someone that really just loves starting things. I love starting businesses. I love starting a new website design. I just love getting started. I struggle more with maintenance, but I do really well launching and having a vision and casting, and just getting everything off the ground. I really love that part. And so I decided that, maybe what I wanted to do was actually develop a course for women to help them launch their businesses. because I've been through that so many times with my business, with clients who, whose website I'm working on. A lot of times people don't realize as a web designer, you end up being kind of a business consultant because your client is, they're figuring out their messaging and how much they're going to charge and all of these things as they are having you do their website. And so it's a role that I often find myself in, and I really love that. And so I invested a couple $1,000s in a course to teach me how to build a course. I started pouring in, hundreds of hours of time in developing the content for this course and deciding what that would look like. And, took my first group of beta users through a program that was an 8-week program. It went awesome. They loved it. I loved what I was doing. And so I was like, this is great. I'm going to launch this as, a full blown course. And it was like an 8-week course. So there was like 12 modules and just, lots of hours of videos I had recorded and trainings and worksheets that I had to create and templates and all of this. And so it was just a big investment of time. And when I went to launch my course officially, I did everything what I thought was the right way. So I had like a webinar, and I, did a series of a drip campaign on, with my email list. And I just did all the things that my coach essentially had taught me to do. And enrollment was dismal compared to that beta group of people that I had taken through. And I found myself, just really frustrated, really disappointed, very let down, very, I don't know, just like, what? This isn't supposed to happen. Like, I had all of this momentum. People were like such great feedback. I was confused. I was like, I don't understand what I did wrong. And I really was, just disheartened, if obviously investing that much time into something and not having it really pan out how you thought it would. And, I did a whole episode on this actually called What I Learned from Launch. And, but what I learned, I guess, from all of that, looking back now with, hindsight being 2020, was that God really wasn't so interested in my course being successful. He was interested in my heart. And I think in the whole process of building and developing and launching this course, my heart's desire had kind of become set on like maybe myself as the hope, myself as the key. Like, okay, God, you gave me this dream and here I am going to do the work and then you're going to bless it, right? And I think his answer was no. I'm not always going to not in the way that you think, like I will bless you through the failure of this launch because what you need is to have your heart pointed back to me. And so when that course didn't succeed the way I wanted to, I had to go back to him and be like, I need help. I need acceptance. I didn't get the approval I thought I would get from man through this course, just really, blowing out of the water. I didn't get that. All these things that I was kind of like hoping and anticipating and looking forward to didn't come. And so I had to go back to the one source where I knew I would find that, that love. Obviously I knew that was God, but I really was forced to like, wow, I guess I really kind of got off track here in a way. Like I got a little too high on myself, And so I was honestly really grateful after it was all said and done. I was grateful for, I guess, the opportunity to fail and to still be loved, and to realize again, he was like, I told you, you are not your work. I told you already, like, let me remind you, it is not about how this course launch goes. And so it was hard. I mean, I'm not at all trying to diminish that it was a very hard thing to go through, but it also, I think I had never felt more loved in the aftermath of that because he was still there and it had failed in a sense, like in terms of what I thought it should do. And yet he was still there. He didn't leave. He wasn't disappointed in me. He wasn't like, wow, like, I can't believe you didn't do that. I can't believe you didn't do better. And so even though I had also never been more disappointed, I had never felt more loved. So I felt like it was worth it, at the end of the day, like if that's the outcome, I accept, I accept that. Like I will take your love over my own success.
Yeah. Yeah. Far better than if hundreds of people had said yes, and this is amazing. And that would turn to dust eventually. So
Yeah. Yeah. And, I don't think that's always the way things go, but I think at that time, that's what I needed. I needed to kind of be, to be like pointed back to my true hope, my source, and he saw that, like he knew my heart and knew what I needed. Obviously I didn't even know what I needed, but, yeah, so it was really good and hard. So I took a break from that course. And once I finished up with my students, I just kind of stepped back and was like, okay, I need to take a break. Maybe this is not what I should be doing. Like maybe God is saying, at first I thought maybe he's saying like, this is you were off track from the beginning. You were pursuing the wrong thing. And ultimately where I landed was that the answer wasn't no, it was just not yet. And it was also, like I mentioned to you before we started recording, a little bit less about the actual content of what I was sharing and more about the format. So it was like, I just need to do some tweaking. It's not really as much of a no, you will never do a course. It was maybe this just isn't the time or the way to do it, and you can do it again later. So after I took some time off, I am now kind of just now, really honestly, starting to reevaluate and rethink relaunching it. So, and it's been, a year since I launched that full-blown course the first time. So it's been a while, but, sometimes we need to take those breaks to step back and get the clarity we need.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable because when we're in the middle of it, it's very hard to see outside of what's happening right in front of you. So I love that. I love that you're not just tossing it all in the trash, but that he's like letting you have this opportunity to go, oh, okay, maybe my students needed it differently. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. And what you were saying before as well reminded me of our pastor quotes somebody a lot and says, I preach the gospel to you every Sunday because by Monday you have forgotten it. And it's like, yes, I'm forgetting all the time God's grace and his love for me, and that it's not about my performance. It's not about how well I'm able to, do something for him. So thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah, we all need it.
And speaking of that, I always want to ask, like, is there a verse of scripture that just kind of pulls you back to that place and just reminds you of, who you are and whose you are and where your focus needs to be?
Yeah. My mind just goes always to Philippians 1:6, which is, and I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. And I love that verse because, work has been a theme in my life. And like I said, that one line from the Holy Spirit of I am not my work was so freeing and so transformative for me. And yet, like in this verse, it says that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion. So I think it's just like, it brings it full circle for me to understand that God is reminding me, you as a person, as someone created in my image, as a daughter, as a highly valued creation, are not the summation of your work. Like that is not all you are. But he still promises that he will complete the work that he begins in us, which is, bringing us to glory, really, and bringing us through this life, which is just temporary, to, eternity with him. And so it reminds me of what the overall, I guess, the bigger picture work that's actually happening is not just simply the work that I'm doing with my own hands, but the work that God is doing. And just reminds me there's a bigger picture here. There's a bigger story being told than the one that I sometimes get caught up in and think that like my story is all there is, and we can all feel that way, I think, sometimes, and get really wrapped up in ourselves. And it just pulls me back to that bigger picture of like, there is a bigger work being done here. And he is the one who's responsible for the outcome and for bringing it to completion. And he cannot lie. So he always does what he says he will do. And I believe him. I believe that he will complete the work. And I believe that I can trust in him to do that. Even if every course I ever launch fails, his word cannot fail. And so I can rest knowing that the work is getting done, even if it's not in the way I thought it would. So it's just really comforting to me.
That's awesome. I love it. So you have given us a ton of great things to think about. What's one piece of advice you would offer to the dreamers out there listening who haven't yet started or aren't sure what their dream is? What would you say to her?
This is my favorite thing to tell people. And it's something I've already mentioned. And despite everything I've said, I would still tell that woman with a dream to start before she's ready. Because everything that I have experienced in life, everything that I have, I guess, acquired or gained, whether that's knowledge or, success in whatever, in business or in life or with family, I've started before I'm ready. And so I think everything worth having, you have to begin before you have a fully formed plan. And I'm just a big advocate of shipping it. As Seth Godin says, he says, ship it. You can develop the product and work on the packaging and make it perfect, a little bit more, 1 degree more, 1 degree more. And there comes a point where you just have to ship it. And so that is I guess I err on the side of, probably not being the woman that's gonna, for instance, I started a podcast with no editorial calendar. Now it came eventually, but that wasn't there when I started, but it was okay. It all worked out. So I think when we get started before we're totally ready, it actually forces us to take the actions that we need to take to be ready. And so I'm a big fan of starting before you're ready. And if it means, for some people that starting might just be starting a Facebook page and inviting your family and friends and saying I'm doing this, it's real. For me recently, that looked like actually announcing to my followers of Kindled and my community that I intend to write a book. I'm going to write a book, just saying I'm going to do this. This is a dream that God's placed in my heart. I have no timeline. I don't know if that's happening in the next 3 years or the next 10 years, but I intend to do it. And so for me, sometimes just saying it and putting it out there into the world actually holds me accountable in a way that if I didn't do that, I think I would sometimes tend to be stuck kind of in fear and lack of movement. And I think for a lot of us, we need a few people to kind of hold us accountable. So I would say start before you're ready.
Yeah. And I was going to ask, do you think it's fear that keeps us from that? And I think you just said yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of things, but a lot of times, fear or perfectionism, which really is just fear working itself out in, specific requirements that you have of yourself. I have so many friends, and this is why I got into coaching in the first place, but I have so many friends who have skills or have something that they're really good at. And they've talked about or said, maybe I could do this on the side, or maybe I could make some money on the side from this, or someday I want to have a family and I don't want to work full time. And I wonder if I could do this. And I'm just yes, do it. Start that page, or I'll build you a website, or how can I help you? And I want to push people over the edge. And really, I can't be the one to do that. No external force can really cause you to actually start. It has to be you that's making the decision. So, and that's, that's been a learning thing for me too, not to force people who are not in that place, but rather to just encourage them, the rest will come. Emily Freeman says, do the next right thing. And I love her podcast, love the whole concept of that. But I think a lot of the time for us, the next right thing is to just start. So, as I'm looking at relaunching my course, I don't have a full vision and understanding of everything I'm going to do or change in my course before I relaunch it, but I'm going to start, this week. I'm going to look through the lessons and I'm going to start making tweaks and changes, and I'm just going to start. It doesn't mean I know exactly what it'll look like when it ends up, or exactly what my email campaign will be, or exactly how I'll announce it to my audience, but that doesn't matter yet. All I need to do is start. And the rest of that will all come. So yeah, I think that, we have so many resources at our fingertips with planners and journals and, all of these goals, goal setting, which is not a bad thing in and of itself. But when you become so uber focused on writing down your goals or writing in your bullet planner and just transferring list after list after list of things that you intend to do, it's like, where's the action? Are you actually doing anything, or are you just planning to do things? Because I think there's, I would argue that it's better to do things than it is to just plan. So yeah, so I love that, that mentality and just kind of, taking the step off the ledge, because really, if we believe God, if we believe that we're not our work and that we're not our success or failure, then that takes some of the pressure off. You are okay if this fails. You are okay. Yeah, you're okay if it doesn't go perfectly. And even if you plan everything down to the nth degree, it still isn't going to go perfectly. So why waste so much time? That's my feeling, is like, things never go exactly how you want, even when you plan them perfectly. So why hold on with such a tight grip? Just kind of let up a little bit and still work hard and still obviously do your best with excellence. Like, I'm not advocating laziness or not trying to do the best job you can with what you have, but not kind of holding perfection out as the goal.
Yeah. That's great. I need that all the time. I need that every day too.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned Emily Freeman's podcast. What are some other resources that have been an encouragement to you as you've pursued this dream?
Yeah. This might be a little different, but I think the place that I find the most encouragement and just strength is actually in developing my faith, like on a, I don't know, I don't want to say just on an intellectual level, but reading works from like the great thinkers like Charles Spurgeon and C.S. Lewis, and reading their thoughts, like the thoughts of men and women who are way wiser than me, and their interpretations of scripture and their meditations on what God has said, like absorbing those thoughts honestly gives me more motivation, inspiration, and excitement about pursuing my work in my life than probably like a business book would. So I find myself kind of going to those places. One of my favorite books ever is a Charles Spurgeon. I think it's just a compilation of a bunch of his like little paragraphs. It's like one page each on a specific scripture. It's called Beside Still Waters. And that's a book where I could literally pick it up and any page, I mean, sometimes I do this, like I'll just open it up and read that page. It's not even like, it's not even broken down by day. It's just by scripture. And just find such hope in the words that he's written. So I don't know, that might be a little different than some women, finding, I guess, resources, but I would say the development of my own like heart and soul and understanding of the Word of God and just meditating on those things, especially through the lens of people like Charles Spurgeon, is probably, where I find the most encouragement and growth.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, at the end of the day, all that other stuff is still, I mean, some might work for you, some might work for somebody else. It's like, no, this is where the true living water is. And yeah, I love that.
And I think like one of the reasons may be, I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. So for your listeners who are more achieving oriented like I am, they may understand this, but like it's hard for me sometimes to read those books that are super businessy and like, I guess just that can tend to feed the negative parts of my personality and drive me towards strategic action. And okay, I've got to do this, and I can just heap expectations on myself and find myself then even more unable to move because I've got so many voices telling me how to do this the best that then I feel incapacitated to even live by any intuition at all, you know? And so I think it's helpful for me when I know that I need to move with power or confidence, not to go to those other voices of like, well, how do I do it? What do I, not to jump down the blog rabbit hole of what are the best 5 emails to put in this launch campaign, but rather to kind of go back to like the core of who I am and what I know to be true and to move from that place. And it doesn't mean I'm not going to like access those resources at some point along the road, or once I've got my sequence written, then I'm going to go and look and see, okay, could I make tweaks? Could I make this better? But I need to start from a place of like true creativity in myself, not looking to the external resources to tell me how to do what I know I need to do better, if that makes sense.
It totally does. And I think it takes real discipline to be able to, there's so many voices that could speak into you. And that's exactly what you just said. So it takes real discipline to be like, okay, I'm going to listen to this one, but not this one, or I'm going to take a time out from all the voices.
Yeah.
So no, I think that's helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so easy to find so many voices. We know where to look for what we want to hear, right? So once we start that research or looking into, you know, well, I'm just going to see what this person says about it. I think we can get really stuck in that place of like, well, she says this, but they say this, and I don't know what to do. And now I'm questioning, should I even be doing this at all? Because, oh, I actually found this other girl who's doing the same thing as me. So why am I even wasting my time? You know, I just think that there's just so much bad that can come from that it's just not, I don't know. I don't want to start there. So, resources are okay, but I would say like be creative first. Start with your own creativity and then let other things like kind of come up alongside it, but don't look to build on their foundation.
Yeah. There's plenty of copycats out there. Don't be one.
Yeah. Yes. Right.
You wanted to share something with the listeners, a little freebie that you have. So can you talk about that a bit?
So, this is kind of in the spirit of my relaunch, but I am developing an ebook called the Launch What You Love ebook. And it's basically going to be, in a nutshell, what I teach in my course for women who are launching something or have a dream of a business or an idea that they're looking to get off the ground. And they, you know, kind of don't know where to start. What is my message? Who is my ideal audience? What's my ideal client profile look like? How do I know that what I need to charge to make money at this thing? You know, all of those things are things that I cover in my course, but this ebook is going to be kind of a mile wide and an inch deep in terms of offering them, you know, the first step to take in each of those categories and teaching them the framework that I teach my students in terms of how to think about building that business, the structure of it, so that you can actually launch with confidence and launch that thing, you know, into the world well.
Awesome. So anybody listening can grab that on your website?
Yes. So I will have that available at kindledpodcast.com/dreamer.
Perfect. That's awesome. Thank you so much for giving us access to that. And I know you're still in the process of creating it. So I appreciate you just like putting it out there, being like, hey, like you said, I'm going to do this.
I'm starting before I'm ready. So here you go. I'm living what I preach.
Real life example right here. Well, Haley, this has been super fun. And so appreciate your perspective and just sharing challenges and struggles with us. And I would love to have you just kind of sum it all up in closing with talking about how this experience of starting before you're ready and listening to the Lord in it, like how has all of that changed you?
Man, that's good. That's a good question. I would say in regards to that, starting before you're ready, I think it opens you up to actually be transformed by God. Now, this is for, you know, the listeners who are believers, which I think most of yours are. But, you know, I think when we've got such a tight grip on our lives, or even when on what we produce, the work of our hands, kind of like I did with my first launch, we exclude him and the spirit within us from really speaking into that and having anything to do with it. And we're so capable, a lot of your listeners, I'm sure, are very capable, just like you and I are. And we feel like we've got it and we can do this. And there's so many tools available to us that we could almost just kind of get through everything from beginning to end without even so much as like asking God for his input or to shape it or to even ask him to let it fail if it's better for us. What a scary prayer. But starting before you're ready, I think just gets you off on a mindset of being open, being malleable, being, having your hands opened even in the midst of working hard. So I think, for any one of us, there's a tendency or kind of a drive towards hustle and grind and, nose to the grindstone, just hammering through something, pounding out the work that we know we need to get done. And there's a phrase that I heard from She Works His Way, a community that I'm a part of, that is, rather than hustle, the idea of surrendered effort. And I would say that encapsulates this idea better than anything. Just the idea that you're still going to work hard. You're still putting in the work and the effort, and you're still pursuing that with excellence, but it's surrendered. And so your hands are open, your heart is open, your mind is open to whatever he would bring in, or ways he would redirect you or stop you, or, allow you to even experience a disappointment that might be coming your way. And I just think when we are working with that surrendered heart versus the hustling heart, I think that's where he wants us to be, because we're still open and we're not, closed off saying like, I'm going to do this my way or the highway. And if we're honest, we don't really want to do it that way, but that's where we end up a lot of times. So surrendered effort, that's what I would encourage.
If you have ever struggled to get started with your dream, this was the episode for you. I love and need Haley's reminder of grace for our motherhood. And even if you're not a mom, grace for our imperfect lives, our imperfect work, and that if things just don't go as you planned, that it may not be that you were following the wrong dream or putting effort in the wrong place. It may just be that you're getting a not right now or a not in this way from the Lord. Thanks so much, Haley, for your openness and vulnerability about what might feel like failure, but was really most likely just a redirection. So I always love to share a few takeaways from the interview. Here are just a few of mine. Number 1, Haley's heart level realization that I am not my work. That changes everything as far as motivation, hope, pressure, results, etc. You are not your work. You are so much more. You are a daughter of the King. You are created with great value and worth. And that's huge to figure out. And I'm still struggling with it. I am such a performance addict. So for me to be able to step away, for you to be able to step away too and realize the value that you have completely separate from your work, I think that's huge. Takeaway number 2, start before you feel ready. And I know that's hard. I know that you're sitting there going, but what if it's not right now? What if this isn't the time? Okay, maybe it's not. But pray, ask God. And starting before you feel ready requires you to trust God even more. And so all I'm not saying step out if it's not your timing, but don't let the fear, the insecurity, the whatever it is, keep you from trusting the Lord to test something out. And if it's not the right timing, he's going to let you know that. But start before you feel ready. Finally, takeaway number 3, the challenge to open yourself up to be transformed by God through the pursuit of your dream. I talk about this a lot, and it's hard to kind of have those open hands saying, Lord, do what you will. Because we are so capable, we can do all the things on our own, forgetting that the Lord is our true source of hope, strength, identity, character. And as we surrender our effort to Him, He gets to mold and shape us into who he wants us to be. That's not up to us. We don't have to formulate who we become. He already has a plan for that you would become more like his son. And so let him do that. Let him transform you. And again, easier said than done, but just acknowledging in your mind that he has a transformation process in place for you. I think that could be a little bit helpful. So anyway, if you're starting something up or just at those new stages, you might want to go grab Haley's Launch What You Love ebook, get some tips on getting started on your next step toward your dream. I'll put the link to that in the show notes, which you can find at meritonsa.com/podcast/127. So here's a recent review of the show. Laura Harris writes, thanks so much for your 5-star review. She writes, such an encouragement while I chase my God-sized dream. Merit has created such an incredible resource of uplifting, truth-giving messages in this podcast. I've grown in my faith and truly appreciate the powerful reminders. For example, she continually centers her message on God and helps me remember the hustle isn't nearly as important as the calling. Thanks for helping me keep my dream centered on Christ with this terrific podcast, Merit. Laura, thank you so much. And thanks for being a guest on the show. I appreciate you taking the time to leave a review. And you can do that too over on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Would love to hear your thoughts about the show. Okay. And how would you like to get involved in the podcast? Like maybe be part of my production team. I'm looking to hire somebody to produce transcripts for the show. This helps me cull the amazing quotes from my guest, which I share on social media and use to promote the show and get the word out about the Devoted Dreamers message. But I've been doing this late at night, too late at night, sometimes the night before the show goes live. And I think it would be so much better to be able to hire somebody who loves doing this kind of work, who probably lives somewhere else where the dollar goes a little bit farther. And I do have someone in mind. She's willing and able and does a great job. And now I'm just trying to raise the funds. So consider this my little Kickstarter. I am looking for just a handful of people. I've got one that's already on board. You can join in for just $5, $10 a month, whatever works for you. I have a Patreon account set up, which you can find at patreon.com/Devoted Dreamers Podcast. Or a lot of you can just look right in your app. There's a button that says support this podcast. $5 a month, $10 a month. I just need $30 to pay her for an entire month of transcripts for the show. I'd love to have you join us, and let me know how I could serve and support you in that process if you want to sign up and join. Also, if you're looking to connect with other dreamers, you can meet us over in the Facebook group. It's a great place to find community with other like-minded women, other dreamers. You can come ask questions, see where other people are in the process. All the women in there love Jesus and believe he's given them a dream to pursue, even if they don't know what it is yet. And we hope that you'll join us over in the Devoted Dreamers Insiders group. That's all I have for today. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. And wherever you are with your God-shaped dreams, may you have the courage to take one step toward their realization today.